Okay, hi all, this is Dawson Gage, and I'm very tired right now, but I'm going to do a little exercise in recitation. The following is from the notebooks of Thomas Wolfe, and this is meant by way of comment not only on my own situation here on house arrest, but in the general political situation in North Carolina and in the United States, which, notwithstanding various encouraging developments and tendencies of resistance, we are headed towards fascism in the United States. And so I want to quote the prophetic and very much relevant works of Thomas Wolfe, in fact, from his unpublished notebooks. This is the notebooks of North Carolina's greatest writer, Thomas Wolfe. Says Wolfe, "I believe in neither fascism nor communism, and I do not believe that one is forced to choose between the two. But if the decision ever rested on that choice, I should choose communism. I cannot agree with people who say that both are equally bad and identical. I believe in the preservation of the idea of democracy at any cost, as the most valuable idea of government and life that has been produced. I do not believe in the preservation of the capitalist system as it now exists, and I believe that it must either change voluntarily by directive force within, or that it will be changed forcibly by pressure from without. I do not hold that the idea of democracy and the idea of free capitalist enterprise are synonymous. If it is necessary for me here to define my own political position, I should say it was definitely socialistic, veering to the left. And if I had to state my politics, I'd call myself a social democrat. And by social democrat, I would understand a man who believes in socialism, but not in communized socialism, and in democracy, but not individualized democracy. I do not believe in the abolition of private property, in the class warfare, or in the so-called dictatorship of the proletariat. I do not believe also in the abolition of free inquiry, or that the ideas represented by freedom of thought, freedom of speech, freedom of press, and free assembly are just rhetorical myths. I believe rather that they are among the most valuable realities that men have gained, and that if they are destroyed, men will fight to have them. I do not think there is any grave communist danger in America at the present time, but I do think there is a grave fascist danger, and it is with fascism that I am concerned. I do not think political democracy has failed, but I think its processes have been so corrupted and weakened everywhere that its failure is possible and its survival dubious. As a method of individual life and general government, the democratic ideal still seems to me to be the best one that men have conceived. If democracy means social equality, they did not, as we have seen, have it. If it means economic equality, they did not, as we have seen, have it. If it means, he's referring to Germany, by the way. If it means freedom of speech, they did not have it. If it means freedom of the press, they did not have it. If it means political equality, they had it only insofar as they were allowed to go to the polls and drop in their ballot. In practice, this equality, actually, he might not be talking about Germany. I don't know where he's talking about. America, Germany. He's talking about North Carolina in the future. In practice, this equality was denied the Negro population, which was 30% of the town. As to their actual right to choose and select their leaders, it was almost negative. Their leaders were selected for them in advance by the political groups that controlled the state, the county, and the town. If the citizen had any choice at all, it was at best between 2 or 3 candidates of contending parties who had been picked in advance by the leaders who controlled the politics of these parties. We know that, having established the country with a high and consecrated sense of man's spiritual enlightenment, we came to care for little save the enlargement of the paunch and of the pocketbook. We know these things. We know them with our lives, with our hearts, our spirits. Yes, our spirits still are living in America, even with betrayal. Is it not true that on great trains that pound and lengthen to their stride across the continent, we have whipped past scrofulous tank towns of the Middle West and seen the station, the stacked oil tanks by the tracks, the big grain elevators, painted red, a moment of light here, and the dreary, blistered little rickets of a town, littered around and bogged down in fat thickets of unwholesome weeds, unpainted, joyless, lean-to, stinking as their backyard's privy, the baked sun-made horror of the one main street, flanked by its rows of wretched raw brick concrete stores and shops, the backyard jumbled up with filth, old crates and boxes, tin cans, rusty water cans, and slimy mud cobwebbed with hens' feet, stinking with their dung. And as we saw all this, did our hearts cry out with joy, and did we murmur piously, "Oh, God has smiled upon this favored land. Thank God the standard of our living is so high compared to that of Holland, Denmark, Sweden, and those other backward nations." Is it not true that we had fathers of a revolution in this country and devotion to a faith? and that we now have daughters of a revolution and devotion to. God help us if that vicious scum of filth and lying and betrayal is all we have to be devoted to. Is it not true that that having known faith and freedom in this land and an image of free institutions, the very words that once gave life and hope to us have been so befouled and slobbered over by the politician getting votes, the politician painting his swollen face with spurious rage, that they have now gone dead and stale and foul for us, and that Croesus, with his filthy money bags at stake, invokes the Constitution and the Ten Commandments in a single breath, howls out that liberty, his own liberty to get, is in dire peril, and that the ancient rights of Americans, yes, the dunghill rights of Croesus to his money bags, is being menaced by the foes of liberty, foes of Croesus, foes of hell. It may be well opposed by the readers of these lines that having spoken of this dark wound of America, I yet have failed to tell them what it is, and I admit that this is true. But it is easy instantly to name a nameless thing, at once to probe the sources of a nameless hurt, to find at once a name, a reason, and a cure for some twisted, dark, and obscure hurt that has been riven in the fundamentals of life. But so agreeing that however bad or mixed or hidden our great hurt may be, so agreeing we must find a name, a cause, a light, a remedy for it. Let me ask you this. Is it not true that we are all ashamed? Is it not true that there is in our hearts the knowledge of betrayal, vicious, cowardly betrayal, self-betrayal of ourselves, America's betrayal of herself? Is it not true that all of us are conscious in our hearts that there was hope of high and glorious fulfillment in America? And that even the promise of that high and glorious fulfillment has been so aborted, corrupted, made dropsical with disease, that its ancient and primeval lineaments are no more to be seen? Is it not true that we were given here for the enrichment and improvement of man's life a golden wilderness, and that we have made of it a wilderness of horror, ugliness, and confusion? Is it not true that we began here with an ideal of a free man's life, enlarging and fulfilling its whole purpose in an atmosphere of free and spacious enlightenment? And is it not true that what we have is for the most part just a mongrel and disordered mob, a jargon of 1,000 tongues, the mouthpiece of 1,000,000 vicious and sensational rumors, but with no faith, no freedom, no belief, a slave-like swarm without the dignities of slavery, a doped horde who seek or want no remedy for the diseases that prey upon them, and seek themselves so vicious, infamous, and base that one does not know which is more hateful or more odious, the fools who take it or the knaves who dupe. Or is this all untrue? Is it rather true, as we now piously informed every day are, that with all its imperfections the American system is the best on earth and offers the high promise of development to the common man? Is it really true, and do we believe in it? When we walk out on the streets and make our way along 6th Avenue, do our hearts sing out with joy at the glory and excellence of the life we have achieved? And when we see the little rabble, groups of men all huddled around the signs of the employment agencies along 6th Avenue, when we see their vicious and defeated faces, the dismal improvender of their lives, not, by the way, no food, no clothes, no joy, no security, but what is worst, bad food, bad clothes, bad joy, and insecurity. And when we see the dreary street, tormented by its 1,000 dreary architectures, tormented by the jungle of its rusty signs, tormented by the rusty rackets of its elevated, tormented by the wasteland horror of its little shops, hot dog stands, grease and food emporiums, shooting galleries, etc., tormented most of all by its racing violence of the 1,000,000 dreary, ill-fed, thrusting, seeking, and courting tenants of its little ugly lives. When we see all this, do not our hearts cry out with joy at the richness, glory, and abundance of the life we have produced? Or do not our souls sing out for joy when we see Jersey City, when we explore that spreading blot of brick and stone, that rusty, dismal jungle known as Brooklyn that goes on forever wholly without plan or end, middle or beginning? Do our spirits sink into the drowning sea depths of unplumbed, unutterable despair? Or do we give thanks for what God and man has wrought, for this triumph of rugged individuals, which has sown 3,000,000 human lives across this waste whenever a vacant lot could be found to build upon? To hate America or love her? Great God, if by so doing either one, I could find out the hurt in me, if by so doing I could find America's. We've got to loathe America as we loathe ourselves, with loathing, horror, shame, and anguish of the soul unspeakable, as well as with love. We've got to face the total horror of our self-betrayal, the way America has betrayed herself. Let us do what Whitman dreamed. Let us stick to each other as long as we live, and let us find out who and what and why we are. That's Thomas Wolfe. This is Dawson Gage. That was an exercise in recitation against, dare I say it? Yes, indeed. It's the hate that dare not speak its name. It's the fascism which styles itself as, as enlightenment or science or whatever it is. I'm sorry. In my next video, I will discuss the absurdities and the obscenities of the political rhetoric of candidate Joshua Stein, who I think Thomas Wolfe would agree. In fact, Thomas Wolfe and Dawson Gage both agree that Joshua Stein is a fascist. That's my story, and I'm sticking to it. And that was Thomas Wolfe's notebooks. Peace out. Love and peace in North Carolina.